Standard number 5 is very similar to standard number 4, in which we just had a surprise test today because nobody was watching my videos. So if you bomb the test today, pay attention to these videos in this standard because you'll be able to do the retake if you understand how to do this stuff. It's all pretty much the same. It's still equation of a line. Where is it on a graph? Picking out some of the important points. You already know that the y-intercept is an important point because y equals mx plus b. B is the y-intercept. All right, so we've already been talking about the y-intercept, and we've been calling it b. We've been talking about the slope, which is important because that says how the line is slanted. This one, for example, is going down, so it would have a negative slope. That would be negative. If it's positive, it's going up. If it's real steep, slope is a big number. If it's real flat, slope is a fraction, real small number. All right, now we're going to introduce the x-intercept. The x-intercept is just like the y-intercept. It's where it intercepts, which means to cross. It's where it crosses, in this case, the x-axis. This is your x-axis that goes across. This is your y-axis that goes straight up and down. So if you get a question that says, what is the x and the y-intercept, and you have a picture of a graph, you got to pick out the point where the graph, the line, crosses the y-axis, and the point where it crosses the x-axis. So that happens to be this point right here, and that point right there. Now you have to label those points, like plotting points, like you've been doing since grade school, when you plot a bunch of points and you connect the dots, and it makes a nice pretty snowman for Christmas for you to hang on your refrigerator. These aren't going to make snowmen, but you get the gist here. You got to tell me, what are those points? This is the point 0, 2, and you'd be amazed, maybe you wouldn't be, but I am, on how many people say this is the point 2, 0. Before we started doing slope, rise over run, everybody knew that was 0, 2. But now that we're doing slope, rise over run, and y is on top and x is on the bottom, people start thinking the first number is the y direction. So you're going up to and over 0, so they think that's the point 2, 0. So I can kind of understand how slope and rate of change get you all messed up on how to label a point. But you got to go back before you knew what slope and rate of change was, when you're just plotting points. It was an x-coordinate and a y-coordinate. You start at the origin, you go left or right, and then you go up or down to get to that point. So that's the point 0, 2, and this is the point 3, 0. Okay, that's it. That's your x-axis. Your x-intercept would be 3, 0, and your y-intercept would be 0, 2. Let me show you another example. Say the graph looks like this. We'll call this 2 and that 1. All right, in this case, the y-axis is going up and down. That's always going to be how it is. And the line crosses right here at 0, negative 2. It crosses the x-axis over here at negative 1, 0. So in this example, our y-intercept was 0, negative 2, and our x-intercept was negative 1, 0. All right, the point that I'm trying to make by writing these right next to each other is that no matter what your x-intercept is, the y value is always going to be 0. And the opposite goes for your y-intercept. No matter what your y-intercept is, it's going to be 0 comma some number. Because if you pick any point on this y-axis, let's say that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This point right here is 0, 5. This point right here is 0, 2. This point down here is 0, negative 3. It doesn't matter what point you pick on the y-axis, you're moving left or right 0 and just going straight up or down. Your x-coordinate is 0 for every single point that exists on the y-axis. No matter what your y-intercept is, the x value is 0. Same with the x-intercept. No matter where your line crosses the x-axis, it could cross way over here at 3 at the point 3, 0. The y value is 0. Every single point and infinity, every single point on this x-axis is some number comma 0 because you're not moving up or down off the x-axis. So why am I telling you this? Because when it comes to saying what is a y-intercept or what is an x-intercept, you just get in the habit of leaving off the 0. Like we don't really use the 0. We just use the y number or the x number. So for here, we might just say the x-intercept is -1, and in the first one, the x-intercept was 3. Up here in the first one, the y-intercept was 2, and the x-intercept was -2. You end up just using the single number. You don't write it as an ordered pair with the zeros. You just use the number. All right, so you got to be able to recognize it both ways. If the question is, what is the x-intercept on this graph, and it's a multiple choice test, you're either going to see it's -1, 0, or you're going to see x-intercept is equal to -1. So if they just use a single number, they're talking about that right there. If they use a whole ordered pair, it's going to look like this. So I don't know how it's going to show up on a test. Sometimes it's this way, sometimes it's that way. You got to recognize that these mean the exact same thing. The x-intercept is right there. You're going left 1 space. So you either call it -1, 0, or you just say -1. All right. Now, when it comes to graphing an equation, I've told you to use the y-intercept as your starting point and then go up and over from there, whatever your slope is. There's another way to do it. Let's say you have y equals 2x plus 3. If I graph this line the way I've been teaching you, you would go up 3 spaces, put a point there because that's your y-intercept, that's your starting point. Your slope is 2 over 1, so you'd go up another 2 and over 1, and that'd be your second point. Up 2 over 1, and your line would cross, would be something like that. Whatever this x-intercept is right here is some number comma 0. Remember, an x-intercept is on the x-axis, so we're just going straight over. We're not going up or down. So the y-coordinate is 0. So a way to find that would be to just plug in a 0 for y. And you would have 0 equals 2x plus 3. So when y is 0, what is x? That's what this is saying. When y is 0, which it's 0 right here on the line, what is the x value? And then you could solve this for x. You could subtract 3 to the other side, and then divide by 2, and you get -3 divided by 2 is equal to x, which is -1.5. -1.5. So the x-intercept is -1.5, comma 0. All right, and that's what the do section is going to be like today. They want you to find the x-intercept and find the y-intercept by plugging 0 into the equation. It works the same way with the y-intercept. Let's go back to what my original equation was. Y equals 2x plus 3. We already know that 3 is the y-intercept, but let's say we didn't know. That's the point 3, 0, comma 3. So the x-coordinate is 0, like it always is on the y-axis. The y-coordinate is 3. So we could plug a 0 in for x. If we did that, we'd have y is equal to 2 times 0 plus 3. Anything times 0 is 0. So we get y is equal to 0 plus 3. Y is equal to 3. So when x is 0, y is 3. What we just did was basically fill in a little table here. We said when x is 0, y is 3. And when y is 0, x is -3/2. And that's 2 points that you can plot on a graph and connect them, and you're done. So it's another way to graph besides for starting at the starting point and counting up and over. You can make a little table and plug in a 0 for x, plug in a 0 for y, solve them, and then plot those 2 points. Plot your x and y coordinates, and those are your 2 points. So you don't necessarily have to have that one right there. If you're having a hard time counting up and over the slope, maybe this will work better for you. Remember, you only need 2 points to make a line. There's your 2 points. Okay, one last thing before I let you go. I was trying to make this video shorter today so you didn't fall asleep and not watch the end of it like yesterday. and I wouldn't have to get so cranky and yell at you. Is that some of these equations are not going to be in slope-intercept form. It might look like this: 3x plus 10y is equal to 6. Say that's the equation of a line. This is when finding the x and y intercepts is actually easier than finding the slope. Because if you wanted to know the slope of this, you'd have to get y all by itself by subtracting 3x over and dividing by 10. And I haven't really taught you how to do that yet. And that's annoying and kind of difficult. Instead, just make your xy table. Say, what is y when x is 0 and what is x when y is 0? Let's do the x first. If we put a 0 in for here, that's 0, so that's gone. So we just have 10y is equal to 6. To solve for y, you divide by 10. So y is equal to 6 divided by 10, which reduces to 3/5. So when x is 0, y is 3/5. Now we can do the same thing for when y is 0. If y is 0, 10 times 0 is 0, so that goes away. So we just have 3x is equal to 6. Solve for x by dividing by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So x is 2 when y is 0. Now we have 2 points. Now we can plot those and connect them. Well, 1 point is easy. 2, 0. 1, 2. That's right there. That's our x-intercept. 3/5, that's like almost a half. It's in between 0 and 1, so right about there is close enough. There's your 2 points. There's your line. That's an easier way to graph this than to put it in slope-intercept form first. And that is what the do problems are like. They're going to give you equations that look like this. They're not in slope-intercept form. And you got to plug in a 0 for x, and that'll tell you what the y-intercept is. When x is 0, that's your y-intercept. And when y is 0, that's your x-intercept. All right, and you don't have to graph these. You're not going to have to take a picture of them today. All you have to do is write out what is the y-intercept and what is the x-intercept. So I really just want you plugging in zeros here and solving them, just like I did here. You don't have to do that part. You just got to do this part. Say 0, 3/5, that point is the y-intercept. 2, 0, that point is the x-intercept. As long as you have this, and if you're going to type it out, you don't even have to have your chart. You could just say 0, 3/5 is equal to x int intercept. If you want to type your answer like that, that's a good way to do it. Then you could just type it right in. It's a lot easier to submit it that way. Then you could say 2, 0 is equal to y int, y-intercept, and you're done. So you can put your answers in that form right there, and it'll make your life a little easier.